It became known to the kids of Cottage Street as the ghost house. Rumor had it that the owners, who never seemed to be there, had killed and buried a horse out back, or even in the barn behind the cottage. Also, upon peering through the diamond-paned windows, one would supposedly see hanging on the wall a rather chilling painting depicting pirates or other roguish activity. In our minds, this had to be the lair of some deviant recluse. Our challenge became that of verifying these rumors without being captured and ending up like the deceased horse. The day of our expedition to the ghost house was hot and sunny. I am not sure how many scaled the bluff to peer through those old windows. I don't believe I made it that far, probably remaining just behind just below the brow, in case the front line met with any resistance. I nervously awaited the outcome and recall a gray automobile, not unlike that driven by Sumner Small or old Mr. Richardson, slowly approaching the cottage from Route 1. Well, this was evidence enough. The place was indeed inhabited by murderous rogues. My memory is of two older women emerging from the car, but none of us stayed to say hi. Helter-skelter, half of us, already near the barn, tore through the woods and up to Route 1, a long way from home. The rest of us tumbled bloodily down the shore bluff into the beach and ran as fast as we could. The trip home gave us time to ponder our narrow escape, count our blessings, and add mystique to the ghost house legend. And from Peggy Haddock, B. Pendleton taught Barbie Calderwood and me how to build a reflective oven, in which to bake on the beach. B was preparing me for the International Girl Scout Jamboree in Switzerland. Another highlight for me was the evening bonfire where Robbie played his accordion, which I aspired to play. And Rob remembers Peggy's brother. Peter Haddock was a good friend. Younger than I, he was a businessman by the time he got to high school. He owned his own pickup truck and lobster boat at age 15, paid for by himself. I shared a lobster license with him, and he taught me to weave bait bags, and we pulled traps during the summer, selling lobsters at 50 cents apiece. And from Betty Blanchard, since our days revolved around grandmothers, and I was a good girl, I remember attending many a Congo, whatever that meant, church bazaar, and stepping out in a starched and ironed dress. I perused with greedy delight the second-hand treasures for sale, but I never saw a white elephant. Grandmother would carefully introduce me around to her friends, all gray-haired little old ladies. She was born in 1895, and so, in 1955, her friends were all about 60, 65 years old. Really old. And from Karen Kelly, I was about 7 or 8 years old when my father took me down to the Steamboat Wharf one evening. There were other people there, and my dad was talking while I watched the other kids, mostly teenagers, who were diving off the 2 diving boards on the wharf. It looked like a lot of fun as they dived off and swam to the ladder to climb up to the wharf and dive again. I'm not sure if I simply asked or if I pestered my dad until he said yes. But he did let me jump off the diving board with my clothes, minus my shoes and socks, and it was a blast. My goal quickly became learning to dive like the big kids were doing, and I soon did. I learned how to figure the tides because you could only use the diving board safely at high tide. I learned that lesson by seeing a boy who thought he could do a shallow dive at near low tide. When he came out of the water, his chest and stomach were a bloody mess.
From Dan Nichols, learning how to cuss. One summer in the late 1920s, perhaps 1930, my grandparents, the Robert P. and Martha J. Nichols family, rented the Lower Jackson Cottage, now Fawcett. They were living in Pawtucket, Rhode Island at the time, but regularly returned to Searsport to be with the extended Ross and Nichols clan. Lucy, Clark, and Jackson were in their high school years. As Lucy recalls, Dr. Arthur Jackson was having the blackjack rebuilt on the beach, and as Lucy described it, the workers used such colorful language that they had not heard before. The boys, young Jackson and Clark, learned more than boat building that summer. The toy sailboat races. Throughout the 50s and the early 60s, primarily the Nichols and Lamb Messers held toy sailboat races in the harbor. Any boat 24 inches or less was eligible. Most were home built or at least home modified. Few came directly from the toy store, although I do recall one being picked up from an antique shop. We'd row out into the harbor and set the fleet off perpendicular to the shore. The one that hit the shore first was the winner. We'd spent many hours perfecting the rig so that they'd sail in a straight line, sort of, and adjusting ballast to minimize capsizes. We'd usually tally up the season's results and have an awards party with all sorts of categories at the end of summer. Jane Lamesser's Powder Puff, built by her father Mo, was always the sentimental favorite. And that's this one right here. That's the Powder Puff right there. Cottage Street Artillery. One year, maybe late 50s or early 60s, the Lamessers and the Nichols gang got into the artillery business and for a while increased the noise level along the shore significantly. The Nichols unearthed a large stash of Chinese firecrackers in the barn chamber of the homestead uptown. Folklore had it that the sea captains brought them back from the Orient. They were covered with Chinese markings. At least it made a good story. At the same time, the Landmessers came up with some cherry bombs and firecrackers. They also found a large artillery shell that was to become the barrel of a very effective cannon. We found that normal coffee cans would fit nicely over the open end of the shell, while a firecracker could be inserted into the hole at the other end. When lit off, the coffee can would shoot for some distance in a fairly predictable trajectory. We were in business, with Dr. Mo Landmesser supervising the operation and Dr. John Richardson close by. We were sure it was safe. The cherry bombs made lots of noise, but the firecrackers and the cannon were more fun. Do you know what you can make? Do you know that you can make instant applesauce by inserting a firecracker in an apple? It wasn't long before applesauce covered much of the Landmesser's side lawn. And boy, did it attract bees! Target practice with the coffee cannon was the most fun. We got pretty good at aiming it. We scoured the neighborhood for coffee cans to keep up with the ammo supply. Cottage Street folk drank a lot of coffee. Luckily, a single can would survive many shots if we could find it. We even took the cannon to Sandy Point on one of our picnics there to blast away at the old docks. It took a while, but we finally ran out of firecrackers. I bet the adults cheered. And I remember one time a seaplane with engine trouble landed right next to our house and had to stay for a whole day to get fixed up. Lots of people had their pictures taken with the owners. And of course, everyone remembers the boats. Danny says, Charlie Blanchard had the large cabin cruiser Masubi II, probably the queen of the fleet. The old friendship sloop Blackjack was my personal favorite. All eyes turned when she went sailing. She was 33 feet on deck, built by Wilbur Morse in 1900. After Dr. Arthur Jackson passed away, Bill Pendleton took over and brought her into tip-top shape. He helped found the Friendship Sloop Society and took part in their yearly races in Friendship. Getting an invite to sail aboard her was a cherished memory of the summer. When the southerly whitecaps got rolling, the Blackjack got going. Still, she was a bear to sail, with her huge gaff-headed mainsail, long boom, and no winches. When at the mooring, it seemed that her length was just in phase with the southerly swells. Many a time would we see Bill Pendleton perched at the end of the bowsprit with his feet hooked around the bobstay, furling the jib, only to get buried up to his waist as the blackjack pitched her bowsprit into one of those rollers. How are we doing? Oh, that's the Masupi. So then there's another one. Okay, this is from Wayne. I use those for Wayne. Yes.